Today, we're going to get into a really personal story from the life of Major Tariq. It's all about one single, impulsive decision he made as a young cadet way back in 1984, and how that one moment of weakness ended up teaching him a lifelong lesson. All right, let's jump right in. So imagine hearing these words. They were the very first thing Cadet Tariq heard the moment he was caught, and they were spoken by his platoon commander, marking a really abrupt end to his desperate run for freedom, and, well, the beginning of a pretty harsh reality check. So how did he get here?
That's really the big question here, isn't it? To figure out how this dramatic moment happened, we've got to go back in time. We need to look at what was happening in the weeks and days leading up to this morning and really understand the intense pressure that pushed him right to the edge.
Okay, so let's rewind. The year is 1984, and we're at the officer training school in Mangla. If we want to understand why a disciplined cadet would risk his entire future, we first have to understand the powerful feeling that was driving him. It was this absolutely overwhelming longing for home. 6 months. Just let that sink in. For half a year, Cadet Tariq was totally immersed in this world of non-stop training, completely cut off from his family. And this wasn't just a date on a calendar. It was this huge emotional weight that was just getting heavier and heavier every single day. You know, the thing is, it wasn't just one of these pressures. It was all of them, piling on top of each other. You got the grueling physical stuff, the constant mental tests, and then you mix all of that with this deep, gnawing homesickness. He just missed his mom, his siblings, and that feeling was becoming almost impossible to bear. And all of that brings us to the escape itself, because on this one morning, all that training, all that discipline, it was all about to be thrown out the window because of a single split-second gamble that was fueled by nothing but pure emotion. Just look at how fast this all happened. At 5 a.m., he's just another cadet standing in formation. By 5:16, he's on a bus. A civilian bus is moving slowly down the road. His instructor is looking the other way, and in that tiny little window, instinct just completely took over. There was no big plan here, just a moment of impulse. And this detail just says so much about how desperate he was. He had no money on him, just his uniform and his watch. But in this moment of rebellion, he runs into this small act of kindness. The conductor just sees this young guy in a strange situation and says, "Sir, this ride is free for you." But that little moment of freedom, well, it was exactly that, just a moment. Which brings us to the consequences, the real price of his impulse. This is where the dream of being home smacks right into the hard reality of military law.
Can you even imagine that? He's gone through the bus ride, the journey. He is literally steps away from his front door, from his mother, from that comfort he was craving so badly. And right then, a firm hand grabs his neck and it's all over. The escape is done. This really just lays out the brutal contrast. Everything he was hoping for that day, seeing his family, just getting a few hours of peace, was instantly gone. And it was replaced by the cold, hard facts of furious commander, an army jeep, and a long, quiet, and probably very shameful ride back to face the music.
So, you might be wondering, how in the world did they find him so fast? Well, it was a pretty simple and efficient chain of events. His instructor noticed he was gone. Another cadet mentioned seeing him get on that bus, and that one piece of information was all his platoon commander needed to know exactly where he was going. And the punishment for this, well, it wasn't just a slap on the wrist. 14 days restriction basically means you have to live, breathe, and sleep in your mistake for 2 solid weeks. A constant, uniformed reminder of that one impulsive choice. So let's fast forward. Years later, looking back on this, not as a scared cadet, but as a seasoned major, Tariq saw the whole thing differently. It stopped being just a bad memory and became probably the most defining lesson of his entire career. And this is the heart of it all right here. He realized that his really powerful, very human desire to be home had totally clouded his judgment. This one sentence perfectly sums up the lesson that was basically burned into his character that day. You know, what's so important about this is that the mistake didn't break him. In a way, it actually built him. He still went on to have the career he wanted, but he always carried that memory with him, not as something to be ashamed of, but as a core experience that taught him more about himself than any drill sergeant ever could.